So you know it's gonna be a good movie when there's a bunny sidekick. Oh my gosh, I love this movie so much. This could easily be a 2-3 hour long video, but I'm going to try to cut it down as much as I can. Hi, my name is Megan, and today I'm going to be talking about Over the Moon, which I think is quite possibly the best movie I've seen this year. To be honest though, I don't think I've watched too many movies this year, but I think with the story, the characters, the wholesome feel-good vibes, the all-Asian cast, and the accurate cultural representation, this is like top tier. Oh, and the songs too. Oh my gosh, the songs are so good. So the movie was about Changle, a Chinese legend about the moon goddess that I learned about when I was growing up. So I was able to relate to the characters a lot and pick up a lot of the little details in the movie. Now this legend is told during Mid-Autumn Festival, also known as Mooncake Festival, which is one of the bigger celebrations in Chinese culture next to Chinese New Year's. The festival takes place on the 15th day of the 8th month of the lunar calendar, which is usually our September or October. And on that day, that's when the moon is supposed to be the roundest. That's why mooncakes are round, usually round. And they also represent unity, togetherness, and it's a time for like family gatherings or meetups with your friends. The mooncakes have a huge role in this movie, and personally I'm always excited for mooncake season. Like there's so much variety to them, there's always different fillings. My favorite is always the white lotus seed paste with the egg yolk inside, and the writers and creators clearly knew and understood the true elements of the legend, so that all these details were incorporated really well in the story, and I'll be able to touch on them later. And there are so many songs in this. I didn't expect there to be so many, and I didn't know they were going to be so good. Like, I'm a huge sucker for Disney songs, so I'm obsessed. I don't know, I guess I wasn't expecting it, so every time they broke it into song, I was like pleasantly surprised, and I loved it. They had a whole song about making mooncakes in the beginning, and the whole sequence in the beginning was very similar to Pixar's short Bao, like how the mom was making dumplings, but this time they're like rolling out the mooncake dough, putting in the filling, putting it in the mold, like all of it was so accurate. I remember making mooncakes with my teacher in our like junior high class. I don't think I'm going to go too much into the songs in this video because I have a lot of other stuff to talk about, but just know that they were so good. Like some were super high energy, some were super emotional, some were absolute bops. At the heart of the movie, I think I really loved it because visually it was stunning, the animation was great, and the details were all there. But at its core, the message about dealing with grief and letting go is told in such a beautiful story that anyone going through hard times or dealing with losing someone would be able to take something away from it. On top of that, there's really great and lovable characters too. Like when we first meet Fei Fei, she's talking about building a rocket, she's talking about gravity, science, and physics, and I'm like, yes, she's a science nerd. Yes, we love a girl in STEM. So first off, let's talk about the Legend of Changle. In the movie, they said that Changle and Hou-yi, or Hou-yi, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that they loved each other very much, but Changle ended up taking a potion and she flew up to the moon, just like how the aunties were arguing about it at the dinner table. There's a lot of different versions of the story. So the one that I learned when I was younger was that back then there were 10 suns in the sky and it was heating up the earth, so everyone on earth was suffering, and then someone called Hou-yi had shot down 9 of the suns and left 1 up in the sky. And because he did this, he became a hero, and he was given 2 longevity pills as a gift. But eventually the fame got to his head and he became like a really bad person. His wife Changle wanted to protect the society from him and didn't want him living forever. So she ended up taking both of the pills and she flew up to the moon, and a heavenly mother took pity on her because she was all alone and gave her a jade rabbit to keep her company. And the rabbit also made medicine too, but I don't really know what else or like what the background is to that. Now, Changle in the movie is voiced by Philippa Sue, aka Eliza from Hamilton, and all her songs were like, oh, they're perfect. And Kathy Yang, who voices Fei Fei, her singing is amazing. Her alongside with Philippa as Changle, like the songs, the entire soundtrack is so good. It's on my Spotify right now. It's gonna be playing for who knows how long. So based on the 30 seconds that we got to see Hou-yi, he is Asian Flynn Rider. Changed my mind. Okay, onto the star of the film. Bungie. Her expressions are everything. Like, whoever animated her deserves all the awards. She's like the cutest thing ever. She's so fluffy. She has her lop ears. Her eyes are huge. And she has like crazy eyelashes, but that's the only reason you know she's a girl. But let me tell you, at the very end, when Fei Fei said that Bungie could stay, I was like, why? No. So at first I was like, oh, it's fine. It's sad that she has to say goodbye to her pet bunny, but at least Bungie is like living in a cool magical kingdom now. And then I was like, what if it's an analogy and Bungie died? And then I cried about it for the next 20 minutes. No, happy thoughts, happy thoughts. It's a cartoon. No one dies. They can't die. So, Wait, I spoke too soon. First, let's get this out of the way and talk about the tragedy that I knew was gonna happen based on the trailer, but it still hit me like, oh my gosh, why does the mom have to die? Actually, no, it was revealed in the Mooncake song, I think, when she started to get sick. And I was like, she's sick? What? I was watching with my parents too, and my mom was like, oh my gosh, is she gonna die? It's always the mom. She was so disappointed. And there's that scene too, I think, when she was using a cane already, so she looked pretty sick, and there were cherry blossoms or like plum blossom petals flying around her, swirling around her, like that scene in Kung Fu Panda when Master Oogway dies. Like, that's too much. You can't like mix fandoms like this. And they built it up beautifully too. Like, they gave us this cute little family making mooncakes and then ripped it out of our hands and was like, not today. And this was all within the first 10 minutes too. Like, I wasn't ready for this. I'm still not over how Up began. Like, I didn't sign up for this. Now on to family dinners, which was like all too familiar, which is really cool to see. Now first off with Grandma. Pretty sure my grandma has a sweater that looks just like hers. In that part where she tells Fei Fei she's too skinny and asking if she's eaten enough, that's such a grandma comment. Like, one day you could be too skinny, the next day you could be like, oh, you're getting a little chubby. Ironically though, Fei Fei in Chinese is usually to call someone chubby, usually used as a nickname, sometimes endearing, sometimes borderline insulting, depends on who's using it. I also love the dynamic of the grandpa shuffling in his slippers in the background, rambling and saying random things, random yet relevant things. And the food, oh my gosh, the food looks so good. Like, it was the round table family style with the lazy Susan in the middle, so everyone's like sharing all the big dishes that are put in the middle. There were things like the crabs that were tied up in the basket. My parents immediately were like, oh, that's that high, which means hairy crab, which is apparently really good. I think I've had it before, maybe. And on the table, that was a very typical family banquet style dinner with like appetizers. I think they're like cucumbers or rolls or meatballs on there. There's also tongboyok, which is like a really thick piece of fatty meat. Those are the cubes in the bowl. And there was that veggie dish too, which was bok choy and then mushrooms in the middle. Those usually come out at the end of banquets when everyone's too full already, so they're not usually touched, but they're like doggy bagged for the next day. And I'm telling you, the details were everything in this movie. There are so many times my parents and I were like, oh my gosh, I know what that is, I recognize that, we have that at home too. So it was pretty cool. From the mandarin oranges hanging from the wall representing like good fortune and good wealth, to the like drying fish that were hanging next to them, to the mentions of like mahjong. It was like tidbit after tidbit after tidbit, and it was beautiful. One of the funniest things, I don't even know why it was that funny, like we were laughing so hard, was one of the scenes in the beginning when it was just a bunch of people dancing in the street or like dancing in the garden. Like, I died, oh my gosh. Because if you ever go to China and visit the parks or anywhere with a lot of space, there's usually people dancing, and it's called guangchangwu, which translates to like dancing in the square. Usually people do it as exercise or do it for fun. They usually have a nice choreo that goes with it. A lot of aunties do it, but honestly everyone can do it. Like, anyone can do it anywhere as long as someone brings a super loud and obnoxious speaker. After Fei Fei's mom passes away, there's a scene where she's wearing all black, and you can see that there's a white flower in her hair, because usually white flowers, you would wear them to represent, or it would be if one of your family members had passed away, and usually it's not a real flower either, it's one made out of string or made out of yarn. When we were introduced to Chin and he was all, oh look, I'm a ping pong champion, I'm like, of course he is. I'm not surprised. But then that led to a really cool song with him and Changle, which is a complete bop as well, so I'm not complaining. One of the cool things that I noticed when Chin was being chased by the palace security, they were the things that looked like missiles or like beams of light, was that if you looked at the front, their faces, they looked a lot like Beijing opera masks, which is really cool how they incorporated that in there, because usually different masks have different colors and different faces, or no, different colors represent if they're like a good guy or a bad guy, or like what kind of character are they, like are they the clown, are they a protagonist or the antagonist. The stone lions, whether in like stone form or the red and yellow like huge dream sequence chonky form, they're the cutest things ever. I want one as a pet. These lions, they usually represent guardians of palaces. Now they're seen a lot in front of like businesses, household, your local Chinatown. I've never seen these stone lions with wings though. I wonder if they crossed it with the Chinese chimera, or they just added wings to it so they could fly in the sequence afterwards. But like, all in all, they were pretty cool. And I love seeing the part where Fei Fei, I think on her bike, she was just crossing the bridge and she pats the lion on its head, because I do that every time I see a lion too. I like pet it on its head, or because usually in the mouths they have a pearl that's like already carved out so that it can actually move. So if you reach in its mouth and touch the pearl, it usually represents good luck. After that like UFO alien abduction scene, when the tractor beam is on their rocket ship, at that point I was like, are they dead? But that wouldn't make good for a children's movie. Gobi, he's basically Olaf. Like, they talk and move the same way, they have the same aloofness, but also some kind of like wisdom really hidden away that they don't even know. Ever since he appeared though, I spent so much time trying to figure out what he was. I was like, there's a fish called Gobi, but I don't think he's a fish. There's also the Gobi Desert in like China, Mongolia area, so I think he's named based off of that. I'm pretty sure he's named based off of that. I thought he was a hedgehog or like a porcupine at first because he kind of had spikes on the back, but then in his song he talked about having scales and then he was rolling around too, so I was like, armadillo, but also maybe not an armadillo because he had a really long tongue too, kind of like an anteater. Then I remember there's like this animal in Asia, I think, which is armored, has a tail, has a really long tongue, is kind of like an anteater, and it's called the Chinese pangolin. They look like armadillos, but they act like anteaters, and it was the cutest thing, the cutest new companion in this movie. But that's all because he started singing too, and I was like, is this Ken Jeong? Ken Jeong is singing? I was like, all right, this is cute. They're playing leapfrog on giant green and pink frogs in space, and Ken Jeong is singing through a glowing green blob. Like, this is ridiculous. It's so unrealistic. But why am I crying so hard? I cried so hard in the scene. I don't even know why. And the scene in the chamber of exquisite sadness too. It was just like really sad to see Fei Fei so lost and so sad. I don't know, maybe it was empathy. In one scene where they're selling mooncakes to a family, Fei Fei was taking a picture of them and they were all like, 茄子, which means eggplant in Chinese, but that's the equivalent of saying cheese when you're taking pictures. One thing that I noticed at the end was that Mrs. Zhang, so Fei Fei's stepmom, had the same necklace emblem as the jade necklace that Changle had. I don't know what that's supposed to symbolize. If anyone has any ideas, let me know in the comments. When Chin and Changle were playing ping pong, I don't know if it was intentional, but then there were a few times when he was like, sa! And then she was like, sa! And in just like a few of the Chinese dramas I've watched, and from what people say, sa is something really common to either like hype things up or go like, yeah! This isn't a traditional Chinese thing, but the ceiling of one part of Changle's palace looked a lot like a white lotus symbol, like from Avatar. This was a movie with elements of traditional Chinese culture that was done right. No one needed to talk about honor, no one needed to talk about their duty. It was just authentic and genuine and done really well through really lovable characters. So yes, 11 out of 10, would cry again. I recommend it. Please go watch it on Netflix. And if you have watched it, let me know what you thought about it, what you liked, what you noticed. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Bye! Oh my gosh, wait, what are these? Like two little antennas. Ah!